The season is nearly over, and every Premier League club will now be thinking seriously about their transfer window. They'll know where they need to address. They might have ideas of who could be going and who they could be bringing in. And in today's video, we're going to go through each Premier League club, and I'm going to suggest one smart signing or market opportunity that they should make this summer, that they need. Now, we're going to start from the bottom of the table, but we're not going to do the relegated sides because they're relegated. They're not going to be in the Premier League next year. We're going to start with West Ham all the way up the top to Liverpool. So let's get right into the video. But if you do enjoy today's video, feel free to hit that like button and of course subscribe if you're new. This took a lot of time, a lot of research, a lot of notes. So first of all, let's go with West Ham. Now for me, I think West Ham need a striker. I don't rate Fulkrug. Antonio passed his best. I think West Ham fans know that they need a striker, and I've got a lot of people in my head. I think if they could get Jonathan David, that would be great, but I don't think you'd go from Lille in the Champions League to West Ham. But then the thing about the Premier League is, if you're 16th in the Premier League, you still have a better pool than a lot of 5th place teams in the other European leagues, for example. But I don't think they'd get Jonathan David. Mitrovic coming back from Saudi could be a potential shout. But I've gone with a player that some people might not be familiar with. And I'm not going to act like I've watched him loads, but I have watched a little bit of Stuttgart. I'm a big fan of Angelo Stiller. But Nick Voltmade of Stuttgart. Now, he's 6'6", gives me Peter Crouch kind of vibes. And in 24 games, he's got 12 goals, 3 assists, which is a goal contribution every 93 minutes. And he's only 23 years of age, so I think it's a good age. I don't think West Ham should go younger than 23 because I do think they need elements of experience, particularly in the Premier League. But he's physically good. And I think, there's a lot of talk about Isak and Etike, but I do think he kind of is in that mould. I think he's a lot more mobile than a 6'6" striker. He has a bit of pace, and I do like him. I think there's a lot that West Ham need to do. They've had a very underwhelming season, but I think striker is definitely their priority. Which brings me into Tottenham. Now, I'm not going to lie, Tottenham was one of the hardest positions, and as you're going to see in my screen, there is a lot of notes on Tottenham because I look at Tottenham and Mickey van der Ven's always injured, but he's fantastic. Romero's probably going to leave, and I do rate Romero. So you're probably going to need a centre-back. I know Gray can do well there. Danzo's a decent player, but you are going to need a centre-back. I also think, potentially depth for fullback, but then Spencer Doggy Porro's good options, but maybe you just need that extra player for depth. But I wouldn't put that on this list because I think that's a less of a priority signing. I think the priority is centre back. There's now question marks over Vicario. There's definitely a 6 needed. Basuma isn't that guy. Benson Kerr sometimes is really good, but he's inconsistent. Bergvall is defensively good, but probably better higher up. And then I do think Solanke back up and an experienced winger. You've got a lot of young players, and I look at Tottenham, and I do think you need experience. Huijsen would be great, though, if there's a mark opportunity, you could get him. Bissett could be a good option, but I've gone with Mark Gay. Now, I've kind of gone with 2 here because Tottenham needs so much this summer in Mbeumo and Mark Gay, but the race for Mbeumo is like the race for Huijsen, and it might be difficult. If Tottenham don't win the Europa League and have UCL football, their chance of getting an Mbeumo, with all the clubs interested in him, and a Huijsen is quite low. So my recommendation is going to be Mark Gay with the assumption that Romero is going to leave. I think he's the leader to replace Romero. He's a captain. He can play left centre-back, right centre-back, strong in the box, composed on the ball. Mickey van der Ven is great, but if I had a weakness with Mickey van der Ven, I think, he's not maybe the best in the air. I think, I'm not saying that that's Gay's strength, but I think he's strong as a box defender. He's entering the final year of his contract. So, had this been 2 years ago, I'd say Crystal Palace are asking for a fortune. They wanted 60 million plus of Newcastle last year, but Crystal Palace have to sell him this year because he's got 1 year left on his contract. I remember watching the Euros; he was far better than John Stones, in my opinion. John Stones is a bit overhyped, but look, I still think you need a DM. I still think you need an experienced winger. I think you just need some of that experience because I just think Son is sort of on that decline. I did look at players like Semenyo or Vissa because he could play striker and on the wing, and he could be 25 million. There's a very good market opportunity for someone like Vissa. But this was difficult, Tottenham, and this was almost the most difficult because I don't know who your manager is going to be next season. I don't think it's going to be Ange, and there's so much that you need. So I've gone with Gay, but I was tempted to go with Vissa. I was tempted to go with Semenyo and Mbeumo. Mbeumo is better than Semenyo, but I feel like Vissa could be a really good shout. So I'm going to go with Gay, but I was really tempted to go with Vissa as well. Man United. Now, I said this before we even linked to him, couldn't you? I did a video 2 months ago, and I was like, if I could sign one player for Man United realistically, it'd be Cunha. This is looking realistic. It's looking like it's going to get done. And it's smart. Man United need attackers. Our defence is pretty decent. Maguire's been decent. Yoro's been really good lately. Mazraoui's good at centre back. Leach was good before he got injured. De Ligt's been solid. Man United's defence is fine. It's the attack and potentially a progressive midfielder. That's where it lets them down. Højlund, I think Garnacho's had a better season than he gets credit for. Ahmed's been injured with the Bruno Fernandes show. Now, when I look at Manchester United, we need an attacker. Now, I think the number one priority is striker, and I get Cunha's coming in to be more of a left-sided 10, but he can play striker, and he is a versatile forward. I look at the striker market and the ones that we can get. Liam Delap is great, but if I had to choose between Liam Delap and Cunha, Cunha is by far a better player. What I like about Cunha is he's 25, he's going to be 26, he's in his prime. United need ready-made players now that are in their prime, and he's Premier League proven, he's got the physicality. And I think under Sir Alex Ferguson, we used to sign some of the best players from the clubs below us in the league, and that's the kind of strategy I like. Now, with Cunha, he's in his prime. He fits Amran's tactical setup. Cunha doesn't play as a left winger on the touchline. Cunha doesn't play as a striker. Cunha doesn't play as a lone 10. Cunha plays as a left-sided 10 in the three-back system, which is very similar to the way that Ruben Amran plays football. So, like-for-like setup-wise, he fits in perfectly United. Whereas if Newcastle went for Cunha, which they're interested in, you look at Newcastle and you go, well, is he going to be your 10 because he doesn't suit what Eddie Howe wants on a winger? But you've got Isak at striker. Do you know what I mean? With Man United, you know where he's going to be because that is his role. That's made for him. So he's doing a similar role. He's a good ball carrier, which is what Ruben Amram wants. But what stands out to me about Cunha is he's not a Phil Foden, a system player that needs good players around them. I think Joshua Zirkzee is a very talented player, but he needs good players around him to combine with, and we're seeing elements of that. But Cunha's someone that he could be in a side full of crap and he will produce, which is what Bruno Fernandes does, is what Amad Diallo has done. So I think that's why it would be great for Manchester United with Matheus Cunha. But I'm not going to waffle too much. Let's go on to Everton. Everton, for me, is attacking reinforcements. Now, Delap I would have suggested, but I just think with United and Chelsea interested in Delap, probably not realistic. You need attacking threat. I was thinking of strikers, Jonathan David again, but I don't know how realistic that is. I also feel like you lack pace on the wings, you lack a bit of creativity, and I've gone with more of a market opportunity. I've gone with Xavi Pedudo, if that's how you say his name. He is a free agent. He's now going to be a free agent of Espanyol. So he could play left wing, attacking midfield, right wing. He's 26 years of age. He's very much in his prime. He's got 11 goals this season, 3 assists, a creative player. But I think with Everton, he is that versatile forward. He can play on the wing, he can play on the middle, he can be a creator. While I still think you need a striker, I think he's very good on the ball. He's very intelligent, decent finisher, technically strong, works hard off the ball. And I think making him available on the free is an upside for Everton, who have had financial issues, and then they have more budget to go and get a striker. I think Everton need 2 attacking additions, and that is my suggestion. Going into Wolves, and Wolves is a difficult one because Wolves have massively improved lately. I'm looking at it in the sense of I think Cunha's going to leave. In fact, it's pretty much known that Cunha probably will leave. But Victor Pereira has come and he's improved Wolves. I think since he's come into Wolves, Wolves have the 3rd most amount of wins in the Premier League, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong with that. So I'm looking at an attacking addition, but in January, it was very obvious that Wolves needed a centre-back. They addressed that in January. Defensively, they've looked a lot better. I'm going with an attacking addition, and this might be one that Wolves fans don't like, because I know that, his career is not lived up to the hype. He hasn't been as good as the last few years. Not liked at Milan. His loan is going bad, but I'm going with João Felix. And again, people might not like this, but first of all, the Portuguese connection at Wolves, okay? It makes it an appealing destination. He is a good player. He's not been utilised right at Chelsea. He's made stupid career moves. I will say this now. Is he as good as the hype? No. But did he suit Atletico Madrid the way they played? No. They're a defensive side. Does he suit Chelsea? No, because they've got Cole Palmer in his prime role. And he doesn't suit Marescable. He's made very poor career choices. And I actually think going to Wolves and playing in Pereira's system and almost being the Cunha replacement brings out the best in João Felix because that role suits him and that's where he's operated best. I think with the freedom of being at Wolves, Wolves, people don't play with low blocks against Wolves either because they're a bit like more of a defensive side. He would get a bit more space. He's got the technical ability. I think at Wolves, in the half spaces, being sort of the main man in the Cunha role, working with Strand Larson, guaranteed minutes, close control. I mean, obviously it depends on the wages with the loan, but I think the Portuguese connection, I think it would be a really smart move. Now we're going to go into Crystal Palace, which, I mean, some people might think this is a cop-out, but I think Gay's going to go, and I think you should go back in for Trevor Chalobah. I think he's a great player. I think Chelsea will want a bit of money for him now. He's been good for Chelsea and was good at Palace. But look, 25 in his prime, I think he's got leadership qualities. I've always said he's I don't know why Chelsea even were thinking of letting him go in the summer. He's clearly better than Badiashile and Disasi. Comfortable in a back four, comfortable in a back three, good on the ball. He's got athleticism. He can do well 1v1, good at his dueling, got the pace, can keep up the play as well. He's entering his prime. I just think it makes sense. Going into Fulham, which again I feel like is a difficult one because, pardon me, Fulham have surprised me this season. They've been quite strong, but I think Andreas Pereira could potentially be upgraded, and I think he's a decent player. I liked him at Man United. Maybe a bit more pace at time, not pace, so a bit more danger on the wing. I had to think about Fulham, and people might say, is this realistic? But I think it is. I've gone with Tyler Dibbling. Very good this season, Fulham, very good at the back, decent going forward. Nunes, Rao, quality there. Awobi's been decent. I think maybe it's 10 and maybe another wingers, what I think with Fulham, bit of creative presence. And Tyler Dibbling can play as attacking midfielder, but he's probably more of a winger. And I think with Chelsea, they could bring in someone like Tyler Dibbling because they love young players, but they've got so many young players, Chelsea, that are 18, 19. If they're going to bring in a winger, they should probably bring in someone that's more ready-made now. Man United have Garnacho, they have so many young players. I feel like we need a Cunha, we need a Mbeumo, we need someone more proven. Tottenham will like him, but they've got so many young players. Oda Bertel, Mikey Moore. Do they want to go on Dibbling? So I think there could be an opportunity where Southampton's relegated. He's going to move to the Premier League. There's going to be, I think you look at Bournemouth's and you look at Fulham's and you look at Brentford's. Archie Gray almost went to Brentford before he went to Chelsea. And I think that's a very safe career move. Now, he's very technical, very intelligent, very good on the ball, very good in tight spaces. He's known for flair, quick feet, ability to drive at defenders. And I think he would bring youthful creativity, unpredictability in attacking areas. And I think what I like about him, and I remember the third game of the season, he cooked Delo at left back. He just ran at Delo when he dribbled and he wanted to take on his man. And when a young player just wants to get the ball and drive forward, isn't playing it safe, that's what I like. And I think he will be a very good player. And I think Fulham could be that next step for development. But maybe it's a stretch. Continuing on into Brighton. Now, I'm going to be honest. Brighton's transfer window, I thought was a really good transfer window. I thought, that's good business. I was a big fan of O'Reilly. I was a big fan of Weaver. And I think bar Minter, a lot of them have been quite disappointing. I don't think they've hit the heights as expected, but I do look at Brighton and think, look at the quality of Caicedo, look at the quality of McAllister. Two of the best midfielders in the Premier League this season. Caicedo has been Chelsea's best player, and McAllister after Salah has been Liverpool's best player for me. So, of course, it's Brighton that these last two seasons have dropped off because they lost two amazingly world-class players. But I think, Balib's great. He's probably been Brighton's best player for me. I like Minter. I like João Pedro. So I'm going at the back. Fullback was one. But Brighton and the Premier League have some pull. I feel like the Premier League has a bit of pull where a player that could go to an AC Milan could end up going to a Brighton because the Premier League has that kind of pull. Do you get what I mean? And I look at Brighton and I think outside Belieber, because they play a high line, sometimes I think technically they're good, but they've lacked that pace and athleticism, which is why I've gone with somebody who, has been really good for Udinese and Omar Solet. I don't know how realistic this is now because of how good he's been. There could be some other clubs in for him, but I think this would be a really good addition. He's very athletic, has very good strength, is decent in the duels, can cover ground. I'm thinking the physical side, but he's good on the ball, he's good under pressure, but I think he's playing in a high line, covering, doing well in high lines. I think this is what Brighton need. I think he brings that physicality. I did think of Tomori and Colwill. I like Colwill. I don't think Chelsea are interested in selling him, but I know he had a good loan at Brighton. Tomori potentially, but I think that this would be a good move. Now let's continue on as we get into the higher teams in the table with Brentford. So again with Brentford, I'm trying to take into account the fact that Mbeumo is leading. Now my first thought was actually Tyler Dibbling, but I'd already given him to Fulham at this point. But I think Tyler Dibbling would be excellent for Brentford. But I've gone with Johan Bakayoko of PSV, who I don't think has been as good this season, but I think he's definitely ready to take the next step in his career. He's 22 years of age. He's got 9 goals in the Eredivisie this season. He had 12 the season before, but he's a direct winger. He's quite explosive. He's good in 1v1 situations. I think he could do well in the Premier League. I think there's just questions about the end product. I think sometimes you watch him and he's really good, and sometimes you watch him and he runs into traffic, but that, again, is quite common with young age. But as a dribbler, as a creator, it's definitely there. I think he's a good ball striker as well. I thought he was pretty good against Liverpool in the Champions League as well in that game. And I liked what I've seen from him. And I think he suits sort of Brentford, get a sort of younger player on the way up. Maybe someone they can sell on in the future. I've gone with Bakayoko. Because I don't think he's good enough for a Liverpool, despite links last year. or a Newcastle despite recent links and then potentially needing a right winger. But I think it would be a good move and potentially in the future he's good enough. Bournemouth, I've gone with one of my favourite players, despite Leicester being one of the crappiest sides in the Premier League, in El Canouse. So, with Bournemouth, Kirkus is probably going to go. Huijsen could go, Semenyo could go. They could lose a lot of players. And I think particularly if Semenyo goes, they're going to need someone more attacking. Semenyo can play on the wing. He's also played as a 10. Very powerful player. And I want to say El Canouse. El Canouse is one of my favourite players. And there was actually a report today that Leicester would accept a price of 22 million for El Canouse. So maybe I should have suggested him for Everton. Maybe I could have suggested him for Everton. I think that's a very good fee. 20 years of age, I believe. Actually, let me double check that. I feel like he was 20. I feel like he might be 21 now. He is 20 years of age still. But he's going to be 21 next week. Plays an attacking midfielder, can operate on the left, but what I see is intelligence. There's a lot of talk about Cherky, but I think he's got elements of that in him as well. And maybe it's a bit more attainable with Leicester being relegated. I think him in a better side that's more attacking, I think he could really thrive at Bournemouth. The close control, the retention, but I think it's his vision for picking out passes is unreal. Whenever I've watched Leicester play, which isn't much this season, he has been the guy that has impressed me, and his quality has been there on display. Going into Aston Villa here. I feel like I missed someone out. No, I just checked. It is Aston Villa currently right now in the table after Bournemouth. So people might say this is a cop-out, but I've gone with Marcus Rashford. I've gone with Marcus Rashford for Aston Villa. First of all, I think positionally-wise, right-back seems to be a period of weakness for Villa. Matty Cash is okay, but I think you could do better. Disasi's not convinced me at right-back, but Villa fans, correct me if I'm wrong. Did you sign a right back in January for the future? I don't know. I did think right back, but I've gone with Marcus Rashford because I think Marcus Rashford, the 40 million clause in that deal, in his prime, very good player. As seen at Villa, you saw elements of it. I think Unai Emery should not have taken him off in the PSG game. When Rashford's on it, he's on it. But he's a proven Premier League player. And I think with, Leon Bailey hasn't been as good this season for me. I thought last season he was pretty good. This season he's not been good. I think for me, my big question is he's not a striker, he's a left winger. Unai Emery keeps playing him striker. He's so much better at left wing. Jacob Ramsey for me is better centrally than on the left. Marcus Rashford, pardon me, on the left. Ollie Watkins up top. You can then, consider Rodgers more on the right, but the 10. I think Marcus Rashford, just the attacking quality he would bring is fantastic. I don't know if he will go to Villa without Champions League football, but he's not wanted at Manchester United. I think his dream is Barcelona, but I think he likes Villa. He's done well there. I think there's a strong possibility Villa could get him. And I think for 40 million, you look at Rashford, his running power, he's pretty clinical, good in behind, good dribbler. And when he feels loved and when he plays with confidence, you can see it. Going into Nottingham Forest, and I'm going again with striker / forward for Forest. I think defensively they've been fantastic, but I think they could do with another attacking addition. I think Alanga's been great. I think Callum Hudson-Odoi so quality. Morgan Gibbs-White's got quality, but I remember they made a big move for Cunha in the January window, and I think with Chris Wood massively overperforming his XG, he's done really well this season, but I do feel like there's going to be a drop-off next season for Chris Wood because of how much Forest have overperformed their XG. So I think they need that attacking quality. And I've gone with someone that's quite a good alternative to Cunha, who looks Manchester United bound, in João Pedro. Now, for me, João Pedro is probably Brighton's second most valuable asset after Carlos Baleba. He's got 10 goals and 6 assists this season in 27 matches. He's 23 years of age. Of course, he has elements of being injury prone, but rather than him being a traditional striker, he's got the ability to drop deeper, link play in the wingers and facilitate them. He has what Morgan Rodgers has. He has what sort of Cunha has, where he has that ability where he could play out wide if you needed him out wide. He's so versatile. He's got the pace, he's got the ball carrying, he's got the vision and IQ to play as a 10, the passing ability to play as a 10, but also the forward instincts and ball strikers and physicality to play higher up as a striker. So I think João Pedro would be a really good addition for someone like Forest, especially if they do get European football and want to push. I think he's comfortable playing as a 9 or dropping deeper into attacking midfield. He's got very good ball control, very good link up. I think his work rate is decent. He's ambitious. You wanted Cunha. I think he's a good Cunha alternative. He might look to move to like a Liverpool or a bigger club because I do think he would work well at a club like Liverpool. But Forest are a big club. They could be in Europe next season. Going in to Newcastle. Again, Newcastle was a difficult one because Murphy's been great. But I definitely think you need another addition in attack. Like Wemo would be standout one. He can back up to Isak and push Murphy. But I think defence. I think potentially pace and defence as well. Shaw is ageing. Botman is great, but he's injury prone. Dan Burn's done fantastic this season, but you haven't got many options in defence. You're going to be in Europe next season. You're going to need another option, at least for rotation. I still think you probably need another depth option at fullback as well. Probably another midfielder because I think, Jolinton being injured, Willett coming in, there's a drop off there. Longstaff isn't good enough. Potentially goalkeeper. I think there's a lot you need to do, and I spoke about this in my video yesterday because you're going to be in Europe next year. But centre back for me is the standout. And I think if you get Champions League football, and this is probably very reliant Champions League football, I think Newcastle could win the race for Dean Huijsen. I know Liverpool are in for him, and I think the smartest move for him is either Liverpool or Newcastle. But at Liverpool, you've got Van Dijk and Konate, and yes, Konate is injury prone, but if at Newcastle, he's got Shaw and Botman, but Shaw will be phased out. And I think Newcastle is very good for development and game time. And I think Newcastle and Liverpool make sense the most. I get Chelsea going in, I get Tottenham going in. But if I'm doing Huijsen, I look at Liverpool and I look at Newcastle as the two. Obviously, Real Madrid are there. But I think he'd be fantastic signing for Newcastle. And I think it's very possible. I think Newcastle, they've got a bit of pull. They've got the money. The Champions League football, they've got the project. I think they will keep players like Isaac Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, world-class players. And he's tall, he's athletic, he's very technically strong. He's got the physical attributes, he's got the ball playing ability. Of course, I do think there's people overhype him a tad because sometimes he does have a few games where you can see his vulnerabilities, but for his age, he's so good. And I think he'd be an unbelievable signing. I would take him at Man United in a heartbeat, but we've got no chance of getting him. I think he's very good at stepping out, very good. He's very two-footed, he can play left centre back, right centre back. If he wants to play back three, he could do the job. But he can break the lines of his passes. He reads the game well. He's good in the air. He's scored a few goals this season, hasn't he? He's defended well. I think Champions League football would give Newcastle the edge to get this deal done. And I think it's a long-term partner for Botman. That is a pairing. Going into Chelsea. Now the obvious one for Chelsea is goalkeeper, but I do think Petrovic is a very good player. There's an opportunity to save funds there. I think Chelsea need to do a few things. I think they need a box striker like Nicholas Jackson's play at linking up. I think Palmer seems to be better when Nicholas Jackson plays. Is good, but sometimes his instincts in the box to get on the end of headers. I think you need a box striker. Maybe an experienced winger as well. I think Sancho's look better. I think Neto's look better. You've got all these young players coming in on the wings, potentially another midfielder for depth, just because as good as Lavia is, he does get injured. And I think Enzo and Caicedo, when they have to play in Champions League or Europa League next season, they'll be difficult games. They could get exhausted. But I think centre-back, Thiago Silva was an unbelievable player, and I don't think you've replaced him. I think Chalobah's been great. I think Cole had a very good start to the season and is very good on the ball. But I think you need somebody that's got that mixture of being good on the ball, good off the ball. And he's a young player, and maybe I should have gone with a Schlotterbeck, who's a bit more experienced. But Lukeba has got that ceiling where he could be the next Thiago Silva. He's a left-foot centre-back. And maybe you want right-footed because you've got Cole, there's a lot of potential there. But he's got strong positional intelligence, very good at anticipating the game, good recovery speed, good at defending large spaces, wide spaces. And of course, he's just known for being comfortable in the possession, good at progressing the ball. He's known for being good on the ball. Already featured in the French senior setup, which is a very difficult setup to get in because you've got Konate, you've got Saliba, that was formerly Varane. You know what I mean? I do think you need other positions, but I think centre-back for Chelsea. And I think it's realistic. I feel like Chelsea know how to get a big player and how to get a big signing in. And Chelsea are dangerous in the transfer window. I said in my video yesterday, Chelsea getting Champions League football is a problem because Chelsea with Champions League funds and Champions League pull in the transfer window, if they want someone, they can get it. They've got that pull. Going into the final three positions, and wow, this has been a long video. And to be honest, this was like 3 hours of notes and research. But City, for me, goalkeeper. I think they need a right back. I think they need a Kevin De Bruyne replacement, potentially another winger. But there's a lot City need. Midfielder, but I think goalkeeper. Ederson's going to leave. New number one. My standout, again, watched a little bit of Lille this season. I really like a few Lille players. I'll tell you what as well. I didn't include them in the list, but there's 3 Monaco players that I really like that I wouldn't be surprised if Premier League clubs make moves for. But we're going to talk about Lucas Chevalier, the goalkeeper of Lille, one of the best young keepers, known for being very calm, commanding and composed in possession, good shot stopper, good reflexes. Pep obviously wants someone that's very good on the ball, but he's got the commanding presence, happy to claim crosses, happy to deal with being pressed and step up as a goalkeeper, good shot stopper. And look, he's played in Champions League, he's played, at a high level. He's young, he's technical, he's intelligent, and I think it makes a lot of sense for City. Which brings us into the final 2 positions, Arsenal. Now, Arsenal need, for me, a reliable striker. They need an out-and-out forward. I know Kai Havertz has done a job there. He's been injured. But they need a striker. They need a goal scorer. They also need another midfielder. Jorginho, I think, is going to Flamengo. I arguably think they need a creative player. I did think of suggesting someone like Morgan Rogers, but I don't think he'd beat Villa this summer. And they probably need a winger. But I think everybody knows striker is what Arsenal need. And while there's been a lot of links to Benjamin Sesko, and now recently Gyökeres, if you have to pick between the two, Arsenal have a very good team now. They're in the Champions League semi-final. People think they can win the league this year. They didn't. Liverpool did, but people think they'll win the league next year. No point going for a young striker that's still raw. Go for someone at the top of their game. You want to turn second place the last 2-3 years into first place. You need those numbers. And for me, that is Victor Gyökeres. You want to win the league next year, Victor Gyökeres can win Arsenal the league next year. I mean, Liverpool is going to be up there. City, I think, will be up there next year. But if you want to win the league, Victor Gyökeres is the player that you need. 52 goals and 12 assists in 49 games. Ridiculous numbers. I don't care that it's the Portuguese league. Ridiculous, 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 ridiculous numbers. Physical, powerful, relentless. There's elements of his game that, yes, people might be concerned about, but the physicality, I think he can do it. Potentially, there could be technical elements of his game that could be improved, but if you get the ball to him in good areas, he will score. Isak is a more complete player than Haaland. Isak is a better player in terms of all-round play than Haaland, but Haaland, he knows when to finish, he's got those dangerous instincts, and Gyökeres has that bit of Haaland in him. He might not be as beautiful as an Isak, but he's going to get goals, he can bully defences, he can lead the line. He can press, he can link play, he can drive the ball, he likes the ball in front of him, he likes to run on the ball, he likes to run the channels. I do think if you were going to bring Victor Gyökeres in, I think if you could get a Morgan Rogers behind him, and potentially, I'm not going to lie, and people won't like me for saying this, you could replace Odegaard with Morgan Rogers and bring Gyökeres in, you would go up levels. You play Subamende and Rice as your more sitting players. Morgan Rogers is the 10, Gyökeres up top. I know you arguably need a winger, but if you did those three signings, Arsenal would be ridiculous. I think he's a fantastic player, gives the real threat. I just think, you probably need another creator in midfield, another winger for depth. But yeah. Going in to Liverpool. Liverpool's difficult. And this one, I don't know if Liverpool fans are going to like me for this, because I don't think he's been in the best form lately. And I think, there's elements. I've gone with a weird one. He's only got 6 goals this season and 5 assists in the league, but I've gone with Rodrigo. Now, I just think this is a market opportunity, but it depends on the price. If Real Madrid want 80 million, there's better players you can get for 80 million. And I do think, and I'm going to say this now, I think Liverpool need a striker more than a winger. I think Liverpool need a striker more than a winger, and I think if you could get Isak, I would suggest him, but I don't think you're going to want to spend 150 million in one position when you need to replace Trent. You want Kirkes. You arguably need another centre-back. I think Kwanzaa can go out on loan. The lack of rotation in midfield, if you get an injury next season to Gravenberch, that could be a concern there. You probably need a midfielder. I was tempted to suggest Angelo Stiller. I think you're actually looking at him. I think Nunes going, a striker coming in is the most important position. I think Nunes going and a striker coming in is the most important position. But do you know what? There's not loads of strikers out there that I'm like, boom. Like Julian Alvarez, good option, but would he come? I don't know. He's only recently moved to Atleti. Does he feel any loyalty to Man City? João Pedro's good, but there could be better options out there. He's injury prone. Akite's good, but it's a risk. I just don't think Isak is going to happen this year. Do you know what I would have said? Marmoush. I said last year Liverpool should go for Marmoush. And I could go with Angelo Stiller. I could go with Kirkes. I feel like Kirkes and Angelo Stiller are really boring answers. So I've gone weird. I've gone with Rodrigo. He's 24 years of age. I know he hasn't had the best season. He's naturally a right winger, but I think he plays better off the left. Hear me out. He's happy to play on the right wing, but I think he plays better off the left. The problem is you've got Gakpo, Diaz and Salah that are really good on the wings. So I don't think you massively need a winger, but you push for Anthony Gordon, who plays on the left last summer. You push for Kvaratskhelia, who plays on the left in January. So I do think, bringing another attacking addition, Chiesa's going to go, Jota's going to go, Nunes is going to go. I think there's an opportunity there. Excellent off-the-ball movement, good with midfield runners. At the beginning of the season, he looked really good. I think he's struggling because of all the big names at Real Madrid. I think he would do really well in a system, and Liverpool is a system, it's an organised system. It's not about Galacticos, one big star. I think the fluid front line would suit him, and I think this is a market opportunity. Look, if he's going to be 80+ million, don't waste your money on him, But I think there's a player there. I would like look if Arsenal was said today they were going to sell Saka, I would suggest Saka for Liverpool. Do you know what I mean? I still think you need a striker more than a winger, but I just think with Real Madrid wanting to sell him in the summer, with him being a good player with that star quality, and Arne Slot wants another winger, I think there's an opportunity there. Let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. Bye.